Welcome back to the program. So, Attorney General Pam Bondi today has appointed special prosecutor, not special counsel, there's a little bit of a difference, special prosecutor Ed Martin to investigate and hopefully prosecute Letitia James for mortgage fraud. And yes, of course, Adam Schiff for the exact same thing. So let's get into this. U.S. Attorney General has appointed Department of Justice official Ed Martin as a special prosecutor to investigate those two folks. Let's see. Democrat Senator Adam Schiff is under investigation for mortgage fraud. And let's see here. It goes on to talk about in 2000, he was elected to Congress and served as a U.S. House member from the state of California. However, he purchased a home in Maryland with his wife in 2003, stating that they would occupy this home for, quote, 12 consecutive months as their primary residence. Despite this claim, they continued to live in California and vote in California. Then they refinanced the home in 2009, 2010, 2011, and 2013, claiming that the Maryland home was indeed their primary residence. However, in 2009, a House Ethics Committee investigation showed that they did not do this, nor did they live in Maryland. Live in California. They lived in Maryland. And apparently, during this investigation, he was reported to have paid back some back taxes to kind of clear up the whole thing. President Trump, however, last month called for his prosecution and dropped the receipts on the Democrat senator's mortgage fraud. Quote, Schiff is a thief. I don't have any more pencils, so that's it. He should be prosecuted just like they tried to prosecute me and everyone else. The only difference is we were totally innocent and it was a giant hoax. And then it says they attached a screenshot of the signed and notarized affidavit that shows that they proclaimed that the mortgage property in Maryland was indeed the principal residence. Interesting that his wife is Eve. So you have Adam and Eve. Oh, how nice, right? So that is the first thing that I wanted to talk about. Then, of course, you have Letitia James. Now, Letitia James is even more dead to rights. I mean, lied about the occupancy number as far as being, if you had 4 or less, it was a different rate. But if it was 5 or more, it was a higher rate. And they had 5, but then they lied and said it was only 4. So they defrauded the lender from that perspective. Not to mention the fact that they got better rates because they called it owner-occupied rather than non-owner-occupied, even though they were not living at the property. That's another crime. And more importantly, lied about the fact that her father was her husband. They signed on as husband and wife instead of father and daughter, because father and daughter would have been a little bit different. It would have been joint tenants in covenant, I think is what it's called. I used to be in the mortgage industry years ago. I can't remember. I think that's what it's called. Or joint tenants in common, which is different from a lender's perspective than spouse, right? Spouse and spouse, husband and wife. So they lied, completely lied. So the two of them are now going to be under investigation. I would assume you're going to have indictments. That's right, a grand jury indictment coming, I would say, in at least the next 45 to 60 days, if not sooner. I think most of these cases, they're already dead to rights. They already have all the information. They already have all the evidence. So there's not really much more to go on, to be quite honest. So we'll see what happens on that. But also, let's not forget who's missing from this. It's Jerome Powell. Jerome Powell is another one that is being investigated. Believe it or not, the chairman of the Federal Reserve is being investigated for mortgage fraud as well. It's like every single one of these people are nothing but crooks. And they think they can get away with all this stuff. And you know what? So far they have. let's hope and pray that they face justice and face justice soon. Now, let's talk about one other story here before we wrap up. This is unreal. Look, we've been saying for years, ever since the first COVID thing came out, when they shut down the country, when they closed off China, when they locked everybody down, right? 15 days to stop the spread, turned into 30 days to stop the spread, turned into what, a year and a half to 2 years or whatever it was. It was a ridiculous, ridiculous time in American history. But as I've pointed out, it was Agenda 20. It was Agenda 21, basically, if you want to call it that, right? That was the first step of the three. There's Agenda 21, there's Agenda 30, and there's Agenda 50. And that's it. So we've already experienced Agenda 1, which was what? Can we change the entire trajectory of the entire world in 45 to 60 days? Can we get them to mask up? Can we get them to lock down? And can we get them to take an experimental jab and change their DNA and their lives forever? And quite frankly, make them kill themselves. Because let's face it, that's what it was, right? Well, checkmate. They did all of that and then some. So the scary thing is if they were able to do that, and that was their, quote, test run for the world, what do you think they're looking at for Agenda 30? And God forbid anything after that. This is why I keep harping on the fact that we have got to confront the CCP and China. We have got to do it. Because if we don't do it, they're eventually going to do something that's going to be so bad, so vicious, so mean, and so nefarious, and it's going to kill millions upon millions of people. And we've got to take the threat from China seriously. It looks as though this administration is starting to do so. We'll see what happens. Anyway, let's get into this now. So, senior HHS advisor confirms the absolute worst that we knew right from the beginning. How many times did I sit up here and look in the front of this camera and say, folks, whatever you do, please, I'm begging you, do not take this shot. Please, I am begging you, right? How many times? I got so many emails. Josh, thank you so much for telling us not to take this shot. I was going to do it, but I saw your show and I said, I'm not going to do it. I told you, I don't care if you lose your job. I don't care if you have to get another job. I don't care what you have to do. Quit. It doesn't matter. It's not worth your life. And at the time I was called, what they call me, a right-wing contagion. They put me in articles with David Duke and the Ayatollah. I mean, really crazy stuff. Because I pointed out the obvious. That in March of 2020, they got together. They realized Trump's economy was too good. They realized that there was no way that he was going to lose in 2024. So they developed and devised this plan. They worked with their cohorts in China. And they probably said, hey, look, do us a favor. Create this virus with the help of EcoHealth Alliance and, Dr. Fauci and the rest of them. We'll give you help. We'll give our scientists as well. Ralph Barrick in North Carolina, the rest of them, right? You work, you come up with something, and you drop it so that we can destroy the economy. We can destroy Trump's rallies. And if you do that, we'll keep him out of the White House. And oh, by the way, we'll put in this demented sock puppet that you and others can control. I pointed that out, and I was absolutely obliterated in the media. Called me every single name you could possibly imagine, a conspiracy theorist and everything else. And then, what did I do? I didn't just double down or triple down. I quadrupled down on my own website for 4.5 to 5 years. Bang, bang, bang. Anything I could find that proved that COVID was nothing more than a multi-trillion-dollar money for death. Basically, that's what it was. And guess what? Now, we know for a fact that that's true. Okay? Listen to this. So let's see. This is Dr. Hang on one second. Let me find the right one. Dr. Stephen Hatfill. This is him on the War Room. And here is what this gentleman has to say.
Out that the manufacturers did not do due diligence to ensure these were safe products before.
No, they didn't. As a matter of fact, someone from the pharmaceutical industry said we were, quote, flying the plane as we were building it. In other words, they didn't check anything.
They were released onto the American market. And throughout 2021 to 2024, the drug companies essentially ran the pandemic response. Nobody stood up to them. Nobody questioned them. Judicial Watch, America's First Legal, were able to obtain
Trust the science. Remember that lie?
some documents. They didn't want to release it. Pfizer, they wanted a 70-year moratorium on the clinical data from the trials, which from the start showed these never prevented infection, never prevented disease transmission. And there's no good clinical data to ever show it reduced the severity of disease. The CDC, in response, I don't know what's wrong with that once fine agency, but they become a supplicant of big pharma. They put out a paper saying, yes, we've saved like 14 million lives, the vaccination program. No.
Let me stop right there. Do you remember about a week ago, I did a show and I said 5,400 jabs for every one life saved? It was an article that I read and verified, and it came from an English paper, right? I put that on LinkedIn, and I got a notice that they took it down for, quote, medical misinformation. So I appealed it, and I said, well, whoa, wait a minute. This isn't me saying this. This is a medical study that I just happened to find, report on, and post. So if anyone is at fault here, it would be the study, not me, the messenger. So I sent them the article. They came back and said, sorry, we read the article, but it's still medical misinformation. So even the liars on LinkedIn are still basically hiding the truth on medical information pertaining to COVID and the COVID jabs. Now, let me back up this about 5 seconds so you can hear
Nation program. No. The paper's been torn to shreds by epidemiologists. It was based against a computer model and against an idea where you have the peak and it comes down and then it goes back up again. The vaccines have injured hundreds of thousands, and we're not really sure how many have been killed by it, but a significant amount. They had to come off the market. There was no choice. You want to make America healthy again, it had to be stopped.
There it is. It had to be stopped. And HHS Secretary RFK Jr. has pulled the mRNA off of the market. I wanted to play this part as well. Listen to this.
Led to the decision of finally getting, stopping the underwriting of American taxpayer for this experimental gene therapy, sir.
Hi, Stephen. Good to see you once again. What happened is that the data had accumulated to the point where meta-analysis studies could be done. These are very comprehensive analysis, and it virtually came back consistently that there was no benefit to risk ratio for taking a messenger RNA vaccine. In fact, it was more dangerous to take a vaccine than it was to contract COVID-19 and be hospitalized with it. Now, this is where...
Or get it like I did twice and get ivermectin, and within 2 to 3 days, you're feeling like a new person again, okay? But what's interesting is that they used something, and he's going to talk about it here in a second, a gene therapy that purposely mutates. I want you to understand that for a second. It purposely mutates. Why is that so dangerous? Because as it mutates, typically it becomes more powerful and more deadly. And they didn't care about that because once it mutated, it was easier to transmit, and the almighty dollar kept coming in. At one point during COVID, I think it was in 2021 or 2022, they were making $1 billion, with a capital B, dollars a second. I want you to think about that. $1 billion a second.
We're now in 2022 that this data started to come out. The side effects for this essentially gene therapy was so enormous and progressive, it was difficult to fathom. And then finally, a few months ago, some of the detailed biochemistry studies started to appear in the literature. And the sudden flood of messenger RNA, it appears irrespective of what the messenger RNA insert is coding for. Just the sheer amount of number of millions of molecules of messenger RNA entering the cell is creating biochemical havoc. It's disrupting protein metabolism. It's interfering with tumor suppressor genes. It's damaging the mitochondria, the powerhouses of the cell. It had to be stopped.
It is everything that we said it was. And they all lied and said, we're the ones that are crazy. Well, it's one thing to be right. It's one thing to be vindicated. But that doesn't make up for the countless injuries, the countless lives that have been lost due to this money-making scam. The pharmaceutical industry and our government put profits over people, which I called years ago. And millions of people are no longer with us because they were coerced by the government and the media and Hollywood and all the idiots out there that were dancing around saying, go get your shot. All these people should be charged with murder, accessory to murder, whatever you want to call it. Every single head of the pharmaceutical industry should be charged with murder. Every single politician, every single member of the media should all be charged with accessory to murder. All of them. Because that's what they did. They took their marching orders and they told you, trust the science. Go ahead, trust the science. Inject this stuff in your body. I have no doubt it killed my stepfather. I can't bring it up to my mom. She took the shot too. And there are millions of people out there that sadly have this poison coursing through their veins. It's really the worst thing that pretty much scandal-wise has ever happened to humanity. And I just hope to God that they come up with something to hold these people accountable. I'm not real confident that they will, but they have to. Because if they don't, I can assure you that what would be coming next would be a hell of a lot more deadly. Those are my thoughts. What are yours? Put them down in the comments below. We'll see you in the next one.